Welcome to today's webinar, Moving from IBM FileNet to the Cloud. We are due to start things off in about 3 minutes' time, so bear with us and we will get going at the top of the hour. Welcome to Moving from IBM FileNet to the Cloud. We've got about 60 seconds before we get things going. We'll start things off at the top of the hour. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Moving from IBM FileNet to the Cloud. My name's Dave Jones, and it's my absolute pleasure to host today's session. Over the next 40 minutes or so, we're going to be exploring some of the main reasons why organizations just like yours are looking to move their on-premise IBM FileNet systems to the cloud. But we're going further than just talking about it today. We'll actually demonstrate exactly how you can migrate from a legacy system to the cloud with the Fast2 migration platform. So we've got a packed agenda for the next 40 minutes or so. But before we get going, of course, I have to run through some very quick housekeeping items for you. For those of you who are listening live today, the session is being recorded and you'll get an email with a link to the recording automatically sent to you in the next day or so. We're also hosting a question and answer session at the end of the presentations and the demo, which is a great opportunity, of course, for you to ask all of your FileNet migration related questions to our speakers today. To do that, simply enter your questions in the chat pod, which is on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll do our best to get through as many of those questions as we can in that session. And of course, any that we can't answer live, we will respond to by email. That chat window is also the best place to let us know if you're having any technical issues. And again, we'll do our best to answer those as quickly as we can. Okay, so enough housekeeping. Let's begin our journey to the cloud. And today, let's begin by introducing our speakers. You've already met myself, but my name's Dave Jones, and I'm CEO of Instinctive Solutions. Prior to founding Instinctive, I held senior marketing positions at organizations such as Uxopian, AIM, and Hyland. And last but by no means least, since December 2018, I've also had the pleasure of serving on the board of directors for the Association for Intelligent Information Management. But honestly, it's not really me that you've come to listen to today. You've come to listen to Joseph Tessier. Joseph is a product owner working exclusively on the Fast2 product at Arvist for the past 4 years or so. He's heavily involved in the design and architecture of the tool, in the roadmap definition, and he gets his hands dirty with software development as well. However, in addition to working on the product side, he also provides FAST2 expertise to real-world clients during governance meetings, project implementations, and pre-sales engagements. Welcome, Joseph.
Well, thank you, Dave. Glad to address this topic with you.
Fantastic. Well, great to have you here with us today, Joseph. You and I are going to be running through a pretty full agenda today. I'm going to kick things off by looking at some of the main reasons why people are looking to move from FileNet, but also some of the challenges that they have when they consider that. I'm then going to get Joseph involved and let him explain how the FAST2 migration tool can help us address these migration challenges. During that discussion, Joseph is going to give us a live demo of the FAST2 software and show us just how straightforward FileNet migrations actually can be. And finally, we will all come back together for my favorite part of every webinar, the question and answer session. And of course, to remind you, with regards to that, we'd love to hear your questions and thoughts as we go through the session. I can see some of them are coming in already, which is fantastic. Just to remind you, feel free to add those via the chat window, and we'll get through as many of those as we can in that Q&A session later on. So, a lot to get through. Let's get things moving. And we're going to start our journey today by looking at some of the reasons why people want to move from FileNet to the cloud. And look, just before we get going, let's start things by saying that actually it's not just FileNet that people are looking to move and migrate away from. There are numerous legacy enterprise content management systems out there that, quite frankly, are causing more problems than they're solving. And those problems that they're causing are numerous. Many of those legacy systems were designed around 20 years ago in some cases. And if you think about it, 20 years ago was an age before mobile phones and the cloud really existed. And as a result, the architectures of many of those systems haven't adapted with the times. And what that leads to is them struggling in a modern enterprise. As a result, they cost an awful lot of money to maintain. And many of them actually need dedicated hardware to run the software and dedicated staff to manage the software. And another big issue is that legacy ECM systems really don't play well with other legacy ECM systems or with any other systems of any type, really. That's one of the primary reasons to why we hear this term, the information silo, that we hear so much about. So, what can we do about legacy systems? Well, the solution for many organizations is actually to completely move away from those outdated systems and move to the cloud. The benefits of migrating to a cloud system for information management and for ECM tools are numerous, and they include getting access to increased performance and the massive scalability that comes with the cloud. You get access to cost savings and completely different pricing models that make systems much more affordable and much more accessible for organizations that perhaps in the past simply couldn't afford an ECM system. Cloud systems are accessible from anywhere. They can be accessed typically on any device at any time and from anywhere in the world. And finally, modern cloud systems are designed as open systems. That means they're much easier to integrate into other business applications and into other business processes. The irony, of course, is that if the benefits are that clear and the old solutions, those legacy systems, are so bad, why aren't we all jumping to the cloud now? Well, the reality, of course, is slightly different. The reality is that migrating from FileNet, from any of those legacy systems, isn't quite as straightforward as it could be. There are a number of challenges that enterprises often run into when they're looking to make that migration from the legacy system to the cloud. First up is size, right? Volume, the size of the migration. If you think about it, an average FileNet migration is around about 250 million documents, which is a lot. Some FileNet migrations are a lot bigger than that as well. As you can imagine, though, shifting that many files to the cloud requires very careful coordination, to say the least. And it requires an absolute guarantee of the accuracy, the completeness, and the consistency of the data and the documents that are being moved. It's no good if 90% of the documents move up to the cloud okay. All of them need to migrate seamlessly. All migrations obviously need careful planning, but a big part of that planning process needs to be focused around speed as well. The time it takes to perform a migration is critical. If you think about it, if you're moving 250 million documents, we know it's going to take a while. We get that. But having clarity on exactly how long is actually incredibly useful and needs to be built in as soon as possible. Careful performance planning, however, can reduce the amount of time that's taken by optimizing things like the order in which things are migrated, the load balancing that goes on throughout the migration process. And doing that up front makes an awful lot of sense and streamlines the whole process moving through, but is difficult to do. Equally, monitoring those early phases of a migration allow you to make on-the-fly enhancements, if you like, during a long migration or if an error occurs. And very often people need to run test migrations to check the logic and the process, but they don't do it. But those that do run test migrations, the monitoring, the access, the results that you get back from those test processes can be incredibly useful. And finally, migrations aren't typically just lift and shift exercises anymore. We're not talking about a migration being literally lifting every single document and folder from FileNet and moving it in exactly the same format with exactly the same metadata to the new system in the cloud. That's not what most organizations are looking to do. Oftentimes, what people are looking to do during the migration is to update or enrich the metadata. Maybe they're looking to create new formats of documents. Perhaps they're going to convert legacy TIFF images to PDF files, for example. Or maybe they're simply looking to delete duplicate or redundant files during the process. Each migration is unique. That's the key thing that we're trying to say here. And each one poses very specific challenges. So migrating from FileNet to the cloud is not quite as simple as you may have thought then. But thankfully, the Arvis team have got the experience and they also have the tools to make things an awful lot easier when you do come to migrate from FileNet. And to explain things in more detail, I'm going to hand you over to Joseph. Joseph, all yours.
All right, thank you, Dave, for this detailed introduction on the topic. As a matter of fact, the 5 challenges we've just highlighted have been isolated and considered by our team over quite a lot of migrations. But let's roll back a few years ago in 2009. At this time, the parent company of Fast2 was already working at some clients on FileNet image services, just to name it. Back then, the only migration tools available on the market were dedicated to databases only and data stored into them. Nothing inside for documents. So it is a storage centralization issue that shaped what became a toolbox, moving documents out from FileNet into another FileNet storage system. In spite of its too techy aspect, our toolbox started to raise interest. And on top of that, the reusability of a document migration approach gained some traction. Soon enough, the toolbox came out from behind the scenes of document management, leading to a software offer. With this field-tested piece of tech and more people using it, the integration of an UI had its place. That way, the document migration could get democratized. The midterm goal was to have functional people all set to trigger this workflow engine and let them manage new aspects of their documents and their migrations. The last big step Separating us from the FAST2 of that time is the remodeling of the tool, integrating traceability features, microservices, and more in order for it to scale well. And yes, you see now the migration challenges which FAST2 has been built on: volumetry, persistency, monitoring, and the others. FAST2 is a part of the ETL category of softwares, which stands for extract, transform, and load. And as any ETL, the chronological order of events starts with the extraction from the source storage system, which may include some pre-extraction operations. Then the transformation phase will, once completed, lead to the loading phase, where the document will be uploaded into the target environment. Here as well, post-injection tasks may be needed for quality checks, for example. In fact, extracting documents from an ECM and injecting them into another is not the main worry. The inherent differences between the documents, how they are extracted and how they should be injected, is the trickiest part. Those differences may concern the format of those documents, their data models, or others. But how do you bridge that gap? Well, it happens in the transformation phase of the migration process, where data may be enriched, datetime properties formatted, and contents converted. On top of that, FAST2 intends to address the traceability and monitoring challenges by offering real-time data reports at any step of the migration, while elaborating visualizations if need be. When you first land on the UI of FAST2, you'll be asked to configure a workflow, picking up tasks from our catalog and linking them all together to end up with what we call a map. This is the designing phase. Once designed, we switch to the next phase, where we'll manage its execution. This execution will create campaigns, which is also a fancy word for workflow instantiation. A migration project will be completed once all campaigns targeting different batches of items to migrate will be finished. Finally, as we all know, errors can happen. Well, actually, errors will happen, and FAST2 will help you to identify those errors, diagnose them, and let you tweak the map configuration accordingly. So that looping iterative approach will bring you to a complete and successful migration project. Without further ado, let's jump right into the tool, where I'll guide you through the steps I just told you about. However, we just want you to have a glimpse of the way FAST2 can be configured and handled by checking out the basic capabilities of the softwares. So, to illustrate the migration from the legacy ECM to the cloud, we'll just need to first create and fetch the documents from the original FileNet environment. We can configure the task accordingly with the required endpoints, and then we'll have to inject the documents into the correct S3 bucket. So let's create a new map here and add both required tasks. This very first task will integrate a SQL query, which will be used to scan all the object stores and the documents based on given criterion. Then we'll have to extract the contents, the metadata, and if need be, all the versions and the annotations. Once this is done, we'll have to inject the documents into the S3 destination bucket, which will stand for our cloud destination environment. Here as well, you'll have to configure the proper credentials to inject the documents with some configuration settings in order to have a migration workflow as flexible as you need it to be. Basically, a workflow migration could look like this. However, you will have to, like we said earlier, to transform the metadata and to convert the document if we have to. And in that case, since the data model between FileNet and the S3 destination environment is different, we'll have to do some tweakings. For now, we will first convert the metadata of the document into an XML file. And based on that, we will also have to add this XML file as a content of the document extracted. So then when they will be injected into the S3 bucket, we will have the metadata as an XML file alongside the PDF content of our documents. We'll then need to add the XML content for that. And with some configurations here, we would just end up with this kind of map. So we're just switching gears here to have a better overview of the migration. But here, what we're doing is telling FileNet and saying to FileNet what we intend to extract. Let's say, for example, the 1,000 first balance. Serialize the metadata of the document, add the XML metadata as a content, add a property filter, and that will result in our S3 destination bucket into a dynamically resolved folder and a dynamically resolved document name based on the current MIME type of the container, whether it's the XML content or the PDF one. So when we'll execute the map, FASTO will first have to scan the source ECM and retrieve all the documents matching the criteria that we just had to specify. Once all those are selected, then FASTO is just sending the documents into the next, and it is just a basic migration workflow. All the documents will go through every task of the migration. And if we just hand over and go to check this task, for example, where we are adding a data, you'll see that FASTO will provide in real time the structure of the documents based on their identity. Here we're just selecting all the documents that has been processed as okay. Within the FASTO perimeter, all the documents are considered as punnet, and a punnet is basically just a pivot format for all the documents to be correctly shaped and remodeled until they meet the requirements imposed by the target environment. In our case, we can see here that we added one new property into this folder, which has been dynamically resolved based on the title property, on the document title property. It was the first character. And we see that we are having now two contents of our document. We have the PDF one, and we have the XML with all the metadata. If now we head out to the destination S3 bucket, we see that we should have all our different folders. So let me just refresh the session here. All right. So here we have all our folders, all different folders. And in those folders, we just have all our documents with the PDFs and the XML alongside, with all the metadata. So this S3 bucket could serve as a storage area for any other tool pinging up the contents and the metadata directly from this storage area. come back. Right. So it goes without saying that although the topic of today's webinar was quite FileNet-oriented migrations, Fast2 still ships a wide range of connectors that may be more relevant in your case. You can see here some of the ECM system leaders. However, this list is not exhaustive for two reasons. The first one, obviously, is they wouldn't fit all on my screen. And the second one is that with Fast2, you can build your own connectors adapted to your specific use cases. Well, thank you. It was a pleasure to show you the Fast2 capabilities into a FileNet environment. Let me hand it over back to you, Dave, to sum it all up.
Thank you, Joseph. And hey, it's not a real demo if it doesn't break at some time while you're delivering it live. So, as everybody could see, we were operating live. It wasn't a canned demo. It was something that was going on. And we've got some great questions that have been coming through while you were doing that, Joseph. So we'll get onto those in a minute. But just to sum things up before we get into that Q&A session, I think it's fair to say that we would all agree that legacy FileNet systems are challenging, right? They're expensive, they can be inflexible, and they can limit organizations wanting to do much more with their ECM solutions and much more with their digital transformation. And for many people, migrating to the cloud is the first step to kickstart that digital transformation for their information management. Migrating from FileNet to the cloud, though, as we've seen, is no small feat. It's important to manage those risks that are going on, to anticipate those challenges, and to mitigate the impact by adopting the right tools, but equally by working with organizations that have been there before, that have done these translations, these transformations rather, and migrations time and time and time again, and have learned the lessons the hard way sometimes. What comes out of that process is a turnkey migration solution such as Fast2 that's been built over the past many years, over the past many projects to ensure as much as it can do a seamless move from FileNet or any of those other legacy ECM systems that Joseph just talked about to the cloud. And, you know, a little bit of a sales pitch on the end. If you want to migrate from FileNet or any of those different legacy systems, Fast2 can help with that. All right, so that's a summary. Thanks, Joseph, for the great presentation and the great demo. All of the challenges that I posed at the start of the presentation, I think you nailed pretty much every single one of those during that demo. So great job on that. But don't think that you're getting out of here quite yet. It is time for the Q&A session. As I've said, there's a lot of questions coming in through the chat. Let's keep those going. But without further ado, let's dive straight in. And I'm chuckling because the first question that's coming from our audience today is making me smile. Joseph, why are you bashing FileNet?
We're not bashing FileNet. Actually, this is back with the roots of Fast2. Everything has been built, and we not literally come from FileNet, but we have being built. This ETL tool has been built out of FileNet, and this is what it is interesting just to look back and to bring FileNet back into the games where it all started.
All right, fantastic. What else have we got? Okay, is there a maximum number of documents or a volume of data that can be migrated in one go?
Well, there is theoretically, due to the resources of the systems on which Fast2 will be installed. However, we aim to target the volumetry of all our contents. So with all the embedded tools and the embedded modules in Fast2, namely some post injection task, the number of documents and the volume that we can migrate is can be determined precisely. So this is kind of open-ended question. We're still aiming at volumetry. Some some migrations can happen over several billions several billions of documents, and especially a few million all at once.
All right, great stuff. Building on top of that question, while those long migrations or those big, hefty migrations are taking place, how do you track the progress?
Well, we can track the progress due to ETAs, estimating the time where the migration might be completed given the current pace of the processing of the documents. And we also have dashboards analysis to help us track the progress and the speed of every task, and then build out theoretical results of how long might this migration and this precise campaign take.
All right, awesome. You mentioned during your presentation that errors will occur at some point during a migration. How do you track those errors, and what do you do when you find an error?
Well, there are a couple of different types of errors, but most of them are identified directly from the FAST2 UI, given the counters and real-time data reported into the UI. Based on that, we can investigate and identify whether the reason is coming from FAST2, from the document itself, because it might have a corrupted data, corrupted documents, or maybe a given format or a given value which is not supported. Or it could also be related to the remote ECMs that we are communicating with. So this is that there's not a prepared answer to that question. It really depends on the root of the issue. FAST2 will help you identify what is the root of the issue, and based on that, you either can store the document because it was corrupted, so you'll have to handle it another way, or just use the retry on error feature inside FAST2. If this is, for example, the remote ECM that has been shut down, then FAST2 will just stop processing. All your documents will be stored in there, and you can just retry those errors without changing the configuration of your map.
Okay, sounds good. We're going to go technical for a second, and then we've got a number of FileNet specific questions, but I want to stay a little bit more above, not a little bit outside of FileNet for a second. Someone's asked the question, the SQL statements that you showed during the demo, are they sort of pre-built and pre-canned based on the target repository, or do they get created by the designer, by the process designer?
Well, they are designed by built by the process designer. Let's say we're using the FileNet out-of-the-box APIs. So as long as this is a query understood by FileNet, then this is a query that you can write into FAST2, and FAST2 will retrieve the documents and get the data resulting from this query directly from FileNet. Everything is configurable into those connectors.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that one. All right, let's dive into FileNet specifics, and we've got a number of FileNet questions coming in, so I'm going to throw these at you, really sort of rapid fire. FileNet annotations, can those be migrated?
Absolutely, yes. The FileNet annotations can first be extracted and migrated, but they also can be converted among all the transformers and convergence tasks that we have in our catalog. There is some dedicated task for a specific FileNet annotations format in order to convert them to any compliant format with where you aim to upload them, to migrate them.
All right, makes sense. FileNet multi-version documents, can we migrate those?
Yes, absolutely. Depending as well on the query set into the connector, all the different versions of the same document can be can be extracted, identified by FAST2 as not deprecated versions of documents, but old versions of documents, and not the current one, and when injected into other ECMs, then FAST2 is able to identify those first versions and re-inject them into the destination environment in the correct order that will have you just find your documents as they were in FileNet.
All right, I was hoping to catch you out, but I think you've got an answer for all of these. FileNet custom objects and potentially things like cases within IBM Case Manager. Can can FAST2 migrate those?
Yes. Yes.
I thought you were going to say that.
They are, yeah. We had to work on that and try to cover as much of data models from the FileNet, and this is definitely one of the supported objects.
All right, last one on this train of thought. Someone's just asked, can we migrate all of the object store data across multiple document classes in one migration exercise with FAST2?
Well, theoretically, yes, you can. This might not be the correct way of processing, because you would have to make sure that they all follow a particular workflow and migration, and maybe a particular transformations based on their specific classes. But yes, technically you could do that via FAST2, but we highly recommend just to handle the migration by batches of documents, extract them, even if that's a couple of millions within this batch, and then make sure that they all have been migrated, that they all are presented into your destination environment as you expect them to be, and then carry on with the other classes.
Makes perfect sense. One final question, because we are coming up on time here, and it relates to that last one. Do you find organizations, or typically do organizations move everything from their FileNet instance into the cloud in one go, or do they sort of take parts of it and run in parallel? How does that typically work?
Most of the time, they move, and they move their entire FileNet system either from premise to the cloud, or they just stop using the on-premise server of FileNet, and orient the users to the new one. So FAST2 has to send the data into the destination environment, but since there are still people using the old one, the FAST2 also can extract and record the operations on the old server of FileNet and inject them and update the documents into the destination environment.
All right, great stuff. We've still got more questions coming in. We haven't got time today, unfortunately, to answer them. We will answer all of the questions that have come in on the chat by email. Some fantastic questions coming in, and Joseph, thank you. Some great answers as well. But I'm afraid that we are almost out of time. As I've said, any questions that we haven't got to, we will respond to by email. And thank you so much to the audience for sending in so many great questions. But just before we do go, let me very quickly tell you a little bit more about Arvist and who we are. Arvist are a global software publisher with the FAST2, Arenda, and FlowerDocs products within their portfolio. Joseph, as we've seen, is part of the extensive R&D team, rather, and the company is now seeing well over 20% customer growth year on year, and experiencing more than 2 million daily users across those three products. Arvist have offices across France and the USA, and are perfectly positioned to assist your organization with all of your information management challenges, including, of course, helping you migrate from FileNet to the cloud. And that really is the end of our webinar session today. You can find more information and full contact details of the Arvis team on screen at the moment. And we hope you've enjoyed today's session. I'd like to thank Joseph Tessier from the Fast2 team at Arvis again for such a great presentation and demo. And thank you all for joining us today. You've been watching Moving from FileNet to the Cloud. Until we meet again, goodbye for now.